everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Pooja and today I'm going to share with you 5 productivity hacks that actually work. And when I say work, they have increased my productivity levels by 3-folds. If you're struggling to be productive, please do stick around because you don't want to miss out the 5 productivity hacks that I have to share. So before we get started, please hit the subscribe button because I've got some really new exciting contents coming your way in the next coming weeks. The first productivity hack is to identify when you're not being the most productive. Now, I know this is a really simple and obvious thing to say, but often life gets in the way and we get so tied up with everything that is around us that sometimes we just forget to even realize when we're not being productive. So just by realizing something as simple as when you're not being as productive as you can be can really just change the dynamic and take you out of a situation where you've just been stuck in a rut and not being as productive as possible, and just switch up your game and just make your life a little bit more different and more focused on achieving those things that you haven't been doing and putting off for such a long time. So simply just by identifying when you're not being as productive as possible and then reacting to that change and making sure that you're implementing things to just be a little bit more proactive and trying to hit off certain things that you've been meaning to do for such a long time can really just make a difference in terms of your positive mental attitude as well. So one of the things that has helped me with this is to look back on a time where I've been really productive and just factor in all of the things around it that have made me productive. So for instance, if it was to do with a work deadline, what has made me so productive? Is it because I am focusing on that deadline and I don't want to miss it? Or for instance, if I was studying for an exam, what was it that made me productive to even revise? Was it the fact that I needed to pass the exam? What was motivating me? So finding out those reasons behind your motivation levels can really just make a difference between you starting to look at the task in a different way and also just focusing on the things that made you more productive that you know that works. So just by looking back and learning about the things that made you productive in the past can really help you with the current situation and help you focus on things that you know that work and also that you like doing. So more often than not, when we do get into that rut and we keep putting off things that we have on our list to do and just don't prioritize it or put in any focus or concentration on getting that specific task done, we often just beat ourselves up, or we see that task in a really negative light because we think of all the times that we've been meaning to get around to completing it, but we just have that really negative thought in our mind. And sometimes that can be the sticking point for even starting a task, because just by having that really negative attitude towards that task can really just be something that is the make or break in you even starting it. So something that I've learned along the way is where there is a task that I'm just meaning to do it, but I keep putting it off, I always just try to start with a positive attitude and try not to hold any resentment for myself in not doing the task, because I found that sometimes when you procrastinate, you do get into that habit of really just focusing on why you haven't been doing that task or all the other things around that have stopped you from doing the task. And research has also shown that the more likely you are to forgive yourself for procrastinating and not starting a task or completing a task, the more likely you are to actually overcome that hurdle and start that task. So I really stand by these tips because not identifying where you've not been as productive as you can be will really just make the difference between you being more productive and taking action today. Next productivity hack that I've learned and implemented is called the 5-minute miracle. And if you haven't heard about this before, it's such a great technique and it's something that I live by. So this technique will really just help you increase your productivity levels. There's times where I've had a task and the more and more I put it off, the more the hurdle seems so far away and so big to achieve. And what I found is by applying the 5-minute miracle hack, it really just helps me take action today. And the way that it works is by asking myself, what action could I do that would take 5 minutes today to just progress this task just even a little bit further? And just by asking myself this question, it has really just made me focus on something that I could do that day and to start that day as well. And for me, this 5-minute miracle hack has just taken away all of my excuses. So for instance, there's been times where I've been putting off a big task because it's not in my priority to-do list and I've got other things that I've got on and it's not something that I've just focused on. But by asking myself this question and also by applying the 5-minute miracle, it's just made me more determined to do that task, because asking someone to take 5 minutes of their time in that day is so much simpler and achievable than asking somebody to set aside 1 or 2 hours of their time of that day. And just by setting aside that 5 minutes to do that task and then completing it can really just change your outlook on the way that you see that task, because in 5 minutes you can achieve quite a lot. And just by just splitting that time into 5 minutes can really just help motivate you. So by applying the 5-minute miracle to any task, whether that be a big task or a small task, you are just making that task a little bit smaller and you're just ticking off another thing on that to-do list and making that task even more smaller and manageable. The thing that I've learned is no matter what size task that you're working on, always try and split that task into smaller chunks and to always take regular breaks. For me, whenever I think about doing a task, it can be quite off-putting if I know that the task is going to take me a whole day or several hours to finish, because it's just one of those tasks that I might just not even want to start. So the main reason for me to split up my task into smaller chunks is mainly to do with time management and to make the task a little bit more approachable. Whenever I have a task that's going to take more than an hour, I've always tried to split that task into small bite-sized chunks, because I know that if I do that, I'm more than likely to complete the task and take action. Whereas if I had blocked out 2 or 3 hours of my time to complete a specific task, I'm more likely to have other things that will get in the way and maybe not even start the task, because I know that I need to set aside at least 3 to 4 hours to even complete the task. So this tip has just really helped me look at the task in a different way. And instead of looking at it as a whole, I've looked at it in smaller chunks. So I know that the smaller chunks are more manageable and I can fit them around my schedule no matter what happens. Tip number 4 is all about time management. This includes learning to say no. Now, this is something that has taken me quite a long time throughout my career to learn and accomplish. This is something that has helped me in situations when I have my day planned out and I've already set aside tasks to do for the day and I've got to meet certain deadlines as well. And I might be approached by another person who's asked me to help them with something that's not on my list to do. And in the past, I have, without thinking, just said yes. What I've learned to do going forwards is actually to look at my to-do list and my deadlines and make sure that I'm not picking up other people's work when I have to meet my own deadlines myself. Just by refocusing on your to-do list and your deadlines that you have in place, when somebody asks you to help them, it can really just open up that dialogue and set expectations, because there's nothing worse in accepting work that you just can't complete. By looking at your own to-do list before accepting other people's tasks and making sure that the deadlines that you have can be met, as well as accepting that other person's work, it can really just help motivate you in getting the task done and make your time more efficient, because there's nothing worse than accepting somebody's work and then just not meeting the deadline. And so the final tip, and probably the most important tip that I've learned to increase my productivity levels, is to check in with myself. And by this, what I mean to say is just continuing to check when I am being the most productive I can or not. So just by checking in on my progress on certain tasks or deadlines at hand, it can really just help motivate me in taking more and more action, because by doing this, it can help to identify situations when you feel like you've been really, really productive, but you're actually not being as productive as you can be. And by identifying these things quite early on, it can just help you motivate you to get the task done.